we go. Okay. Okay, so again, thank you everyone for spending your Thursday evening with me. We're going to kind of jump right into it. Tonight we're here to talk about supporting resiliency in the early years. And I would like to start off with a land acknowledgement. And I like to use a lot of visuals in my presentations, and this painting here is actually a map of Canada, but it's unlike any other usual map where the surface of each province or territory is covered by the representational animals that have been painted in the traditional Indigenous designs that the artist Jennifer Odombe had grown up in. Now, she's not Indigenous, but I did want to share this map of Canada because it does really illustrate the synchronous and the intricacy that's connected between the relationships of First Nations people with the land. Okay. Oh, we got Maliha here. Perfect. Okay. My apologies. So with that, I would like to acknowledge that the land on which we're virtually meeting on tonight is the traditional territory of several nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. It is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. I also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13, signed with the Mississaugas of the Credit, and the Williams Treaty, signed with multiple Mississaugas and Chippewa bands. Okay. And I also recognize my own responsibility to serve as an ally with Indigenous peoples in redressing the legacy of residential schools and advancing the process of reconciliation by contributing to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada's call to action. Okay. And I'd also like to read quickly our African ancestral acknowledgement. So CDI, I also like to acknowledge that all treaty peoples, including those who came here as settlers, as migrants, either in this generation or generations past, and those of us who came here involuntarily, particularly those brought to us through these lands as a result of the transatlantic slave trade and slavery. And I like to pay tribute to those ancestors with African origin and descent. Okay. So jumping into it, I just want to talk a little bit about confidentiality and privacy. To respect the confidentiality and everybody of participating tonight, I do request that you refrain from taking any photos or screenshots. Again, this recording will be made available for those who weren't able to attend. And if needed, I'm also happy to provide the slide deck following this presentation. Okay, so Sally, Danielle, Maria, if you would like the slide deck afterwards, please let me know, and I'm happy to forward that along with the certificates. Okay. So the content in this workshop tonight might be really sensitive to some of you. If you feel that you need to excuse yourself, please feel free to do so, and also be gentle with yourself. Okay, we are talking about resiliency, and we're going to get into a few things that might be triggering for you. Okay. And this is a safe space. You're all invited to share if you feel comfortable and at any time. There's no pressure, no expectation for your participation, okay? If you've joined here tonight just to listen to what's being said, then that's absolutely fine too. I thank you just for being here tonight and being present. And I need to say that I am not a medical practitioner, okay? I cannot provide any medical advice. And I do come to you this evening sharing my own knowledge, my own research, and my own personal experiences, okay? So before we get started, actually, I'm going to skip this slide because I know you guys are all educators and that, my apologies, that one should have been taken out, okay? So we are going to talk tonight about what adversity is, okay? Then we're going to get into what is resiliency, right? The reason why we're here. We're going to look at the impacts on behavior, ways to respond and support the little peoples that we work with. We're going to look at some resources, and then there'll be some time for questions and comments, okay? So by the end of this workshop, you should be able to understand what adversity is and resiliency and how it impacts on our child development, okay? You're going to be aware of what ACEs are. You're going to have a broader idea in creating caring and nurturing environments. Not that you're not already doing that. It just helps to open up that box a little bit and maybe give some more strategies that you haven't thought about. And then we'll be able to establish key strategies to support the children that we care for, and then gain confidence to assist those kiddos who have experienced adversities. Okay. So, what is adversity? Childhood adversity is a very broad term that refers to a wide range of circumstances or events that have posed a serious threat to a child's physical or psychological well being. Okay, and Merriam-Webster Dictionary states it as a state or instance of serious or continued difficulty or misfortune. So, traumatic events can significantly affect people in many ways, especially when they're experienced as a child. Have you ever learned or heard the line of, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas? It kind of goes around, right? It's like, hey, whatever happens, it never needs to be spoken about again. You have your fun, you're living it up, and then you go on your merry way, not giving it another thought. Well, sounds great. But unfortunately, what happens in childhood does not stay in childhood. All right. Traumatic experiences don't always offer an opportunity to feel your feelings. And if you're too young to understand them properly, it can create lingering traumatic reactions. And sometimes this affects the childhood trauma, and adversities may continue well into their adulthood. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about ACEs. Okay. ACEs are serious childhood traumas that have resulted in toxic stress that can harm a child's brain. Okay. According to BetterHelp.com, childhood trauma can take many forms, though it generally encompasses scary, dangerous, violent, or life threatening events that have been experienced or witnessed by a child. Many children may not have yet had the emotional intelligence to understand the overwhelming feelings they experience in these situations, which often can lead to difficulty processing those emotions, right? So, a lot of times we see kids with self regulation challenges that's really hard to tone in, and we really just can't get them calmed down. Well, that could be because of an ACE. Maybe it's something they're reliving, some sort of a trauma that has triggered them to feel this way. A NACE research study in the mid 1990s proved a direct correlation between childhood abuse and neglect and dysfunction and the physical and mental health problems as adults. So it does lead up. So we have our adverse childhood experiences, right from birth, right? It could be right from the time that the children are in the womb, and it goes up as they're growing older. They're experiencing more of these adverse experiences. It affects social, emotional, and cognitive impairments. Then we adopt health and risk behaviors. We end up with diseases and disabilities, social problems, and then we have early death. Okay. And that's a lot to kind of hear first off, right? But before we can get into understanding resiliency, we have to understand what helps us build that resiliency. Okay. Um, So essentially, ACEs is a set of yes and no questions that originated from a 1995 study conducted by the Centers for Disease and Control. And what it does is it addresses various areas of adversity that a child or family might experience. And an ACEs score may impact, as I mentioned, the child's health and development. And the higher the score, or the more ACEs that a child has, the more likely they're going to have an impact on their development and their health as they get older. Now, ACEs itself is a whole other workshop. So we're going to kind of end here with the ACEs part. If you are interested in the quiz, I've included the link on the bottom of the slide. You're more than welcome to go to it. Again, this is a safe space. You don't have to share anything if you don't like. But if you want to think, hey, wonder if some of these things have been bothering me as I've been growing up because A, B, C, and D happened to me, feel free to go on the website and you can take that test. Okay. And it's not assessment, it's just to kind of help guide you. All right. So there's three main types of adversity in childhood: um, abuse, neglect, and household dysfunction. We've heard of these all. We're educators. We've been through it all. Been through the training. We've probably seen most of it in our care with our children as well. Okay. So very briefly, abuse could be physical, emotional, psychological. A child's basic needs, right? Food, clothing, shelter. Um, the neglect is the part where they're not being met or they're not properly supervised or kept safe, right? Emotional neglect, a child is not getting that nurturing and stimulation they need. And this could be due to parent ignoring them, uh, being humiliated, maybe they're being intimidated, maybe they're isolated. Um, we also have educational neglect, right? A parent isn't making sure their child is given proper education, medical neglect, Children aren't given proper health care, includes dental care, refusing and ignoring medical recommendations, right? Now, not all adversities exert the same impact or trigger the same way or with the same response. All right. For example, if we're being physically active or being physically or sexually abused, may have more serious consequences for child development than does parents experiencing divorce, okay, or a separation in the family. Now, there's so many more circumstances that can cause adversity, and these are just a few more to think about. Okay, a little more than a few, but see, there's a lot of things going on there, right? On top of what we just read about. And then there's the medical, right? Maybe there's childhood illnesses. Maybe the child's been frequently hospitalized. There's been a pain or injury. Maybe they've experienced a natural disaster, poverty. Maybe they've been homeless. Um, Social influences, right? A whole lot about, racism going on, anti-Semitism, there's, experiencing bullying, violence, discrimination, all of these things, right? So, like, do any of these resonate with you? Have you experienced any of these? How many? This isn't, you don't have to answer that, just things for you to think about, all right, for you to toss around and play with. Um, and have the children do you know of in your care, your own children, have they experienced any of these? Right? It doesn't necessarily mean they've had developmental challenges because of them. And we'll get into that a little bit later on how we support resiliency and how we help our children get through these ACEs. But these are many of the things that we can see that would be adversities for our children. Okay. So just a quick sign into what behavior might look like, okay? In any workshop I've done, if you've attended any of them with me before, in every workshop, no matter what it is, you will hear me say that behavior equals communication, okay? If a behavior is happening, we need to think, why this behavior and why now, right? We need to be detectives to figure out what's going on. So essentially what we're seeing is we could see children who are crying, they're hitting, they're talking back, maybe they're hiding, they're running away, maybe they're reacting what we see as aggressively by hitting or pushing, maybe they're biting. That's on the top of the iceberg, right? That's just the tip of the stuff that we see. But what we're not seeing, what's really happening internally with them, they're sad, they're confused, they may have a low self-esteem, they don't have those self-regulation skills, maybe they're tired, they're hungry, they've got anxiety, they're worried about something. These are all those things that we don't see, right? That's under the water, right? And we know from icebergs that you only do see the tip of it in the top of the water. It goes down so much further, right? So why the behavior? Why now? Okay. Behavior equals communication. What are the children's behaviors trying to tell us? So, studies have found that substantial increases in attention and behavioral problems among children as young as 5 after they've had accumulative scores of ACEs. Okay. And behaviors that we may see with children who have experienced ACEs are following. So, misleading behaviors in infants from birth to 3 years old. We're seeing eating and sleep disturbances. We're seeing separation anxiety, passiveness, they're easily startled, general fearfulness. They're irritable, aggressive behaviors, constricted mood, and play. Children from 3 to 6. They're avoidant, they're anxious, they're fearful. They become restless and impulsive and hyperactive. There's inattention, there's daydreaming, difficulty problem solving, irritability, aggressive behavior, sadness, depression, poor peer relationships, and social problems. What does that whole list sound like to you? Anybody want to jump in? I can't see you, so feel free to unmute yourself. What is that list right there? If you were to see that, what would you think immediately for a child?
Oh, that's being abused. Abused.
Could be abused, yeah. What else? Think about diagnoses that are kind of flowing around really, really
Oh,
easily.
yeah. Sure. Autism.
ADHD.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. So these these ACEs, these behaviors that your children are experiencing from ACEs could be diagnosed as something other than what it is, right? They can get a wrong diagnosis because of this.
For sure. Yes.
And school agers, right? They could have um, ACEs can also affect student learning and behaviors in the classroom, right? So children with 3 or more ACEs are 5 times more likely to have attendance issues, 6 times more likely to have behavioral problems, and 3 times more likely to experience academic failure. Okay. And ACEs are proven to create, some form of stress, which is going to put pressure on our developing brain. And these pressures can manifest in various ways, including increased learning problems, challenges forming relationships, increased stress hormones, weakening the immune system, decreased ability to persevere through challenges, and more. So in the classroom themselves, it could look like a child exhibiting, clingy or isolating behavior. Maybe they're very passive or quiet. Frequent symptoms like tummy aches and headaches, fevers, all these type of things. They could be always in that fight or flight stage as well. After a teacher might give them a direction, and all these, if you think about it, could also look like ADHD. It could also look like autism. It could look like so many different things. It could look like developmental delays, all these different things because of these specific behaviors that can be very misleading. And that's the problem when we're trying to diagnose, and that is that, one characteristic could probably be included in 100 different assessments, 100 different diagnoses. Many of these resemble specifically ADHD, specifically problems with the focusing, the hyperactivity, emotional outbursts, and it could, like I said, it could lead to a misdiagnosis. Okay, so some physiological symptoms. How does our body keep score? Okay, sometimes when overwhelming traumatic events are happening, the physiological energy can be pushed down into our body. And this trapped trauma, for lack of better terminology, or energy, can show up in many different ways. So it could show up in our body size. Maybe we're gaining weight, maybe we're losing weight. Our movement memory, our bodies get stiff and we get a little bit clumsy sometimes. We have an upset stomach. Our digestion is very weak. Maybe we end up, having diarrhea. Maybe we end up constipated. Lots of pains, right? It feels like, oh my gosh, I'm only 25, but man, I feel like I'm 85, right? We're craving different types of foods, salty, sugary foods, fried foods. Our immune system is weak. We're getting sick all the time. Our heart is constantly, beating in our chest. We feel disassociated. We're very foggy. We're getting headaches. Maybe we're having some emotional flashbacks, right? Those triggers. We're tired. All these things. We could have non-epileptic, oh my goodness, non-epileptic seizures as well. Okay, so our body keeps scores in these ways, and we may not see it, and then just one thing might trigger that, and then we start feeling all these things. Okay, and again, it can show up in so many different ways and at any time. So the impacts of adversity on behavior. Early adversity, as I said, can lead to a variety of short and long-term negative health effects. Okay, it can disrupt early brain development and compromise functioning of the nervous system and the immune systems, as we saw in that last slide. And the more adverse experiences in childhood, that greater the likelihood of developmental delays and other problems as the child is getting older. So, a child who feels powerless, or maybe who grew up fearing an abusive authority figure, may react defensively and aggressively in response to perceived blame or attack. So, we saw the school ager, right? They're feeling blamed, or they don't like what the teacher's saying. They kind of shy back, fight or flight, right? Maybe something like that has happened to them at home. Or alternately, maybe times where they've been over controlled, rigid, and unusually compliant with adults. If a child disassociates often, this also affect the behavior, right? Um, Child might seem spacey, detached, kind of in their own little world, out of touch with reality. These are kiddos that are getting those diagnoses of autism, right? And as the children are getting older, they may engage in illegal activities, stealing, running away, making it more likely that they're going to enter the juvenile justice system. Now, toxic stress from ACEs can actually change brain development and affect how the body responds to stress. And stress is really an amazing thing, how much it actually does affect our brain, and that it can rewire depending on how bad the trauma is. Okay. Now, it can be easily triggered or set off, and it's more likely to react intensely, even to something that might seem very minimal to us, right? Our kiddos may be struggling with self regulation. They may be behaving in ways that are appearing unpredictable, oppositional, volatile, and extreme. I'm sure we've seen all these children unpredictable, oppositional, absolutely, volatile, and extreme, right? Complexly traumatized children are more likely to engage in those high risk behaviors, also in self harm, unsafe practices as they're getting older, and excessive risk taking. So you've all heard of fight, flight, and freeze, right? Has anybody heard of the fawn now as well?
No, no.
No, I've never
No?
heard of that.
Okay. So normally we're just used to that fight, flight, or freeze, right? Um, so from an evolutionary standpoint, we all have an inherent automatic stress response, right? It's our brains perceiving danger within our environment. So these stress responses serve us well by allowing us to, quickly sum up what that dangerous situation is, allowing us to respond in a way that's going to ensure our survival and get us to safety. And in just a moment, we're actually going to look at a little a video of it as well. We got Thelma here now. So essentially, fighting is our rage, anger, being bullied, intimidated. Um, in flight, we're panicking, we're worrying, rumination, perfectionism, right? I got to get this right. We're freezing, we're disassociated, we've got anger, we're numb, we feel stuck. And when we're in fawn, we're identity confused, we have no boundaries, we have a codependency, and we want to be a people pleaser. Okay. Now, when a potential threat is encountered, such as I don't know, I like snakes, but in case any of you don't like snakes, think about you come up across a snake. Well, our brains are automatically responding in an appropriate stress mode of either fight or flight, freeze or fawn. So our bodies are reacting the same way when we're confronted with a traumatic event. So our bodies may not understand, or our brains may not understand that, this isn't a real snake. It could be a fake snake, but traumatically, this is our reaction to it, right? It's our fight or flight response is triggered. Um, when a person's exposed to prolonged trauma or abuse, this may result in that person experiencing high emotional and physical distress levels. So you might find themselves trying to make sense of an event. They might be quicker to anger at the slightest provocation, so that's their fight. They might immerse themselves in work to avoid interpersonal conflicts. So we're kind of fighting off, I'm going to forget about it, I'm not going to deal with this. Or feel defeated in the ability to make decisions and just freeze, right? The fight response is our body's way of facing that perceived threat aggressively. Flight means our body's urging us to run from danger. I want nothing to do with it. Freezing is our body's inability to move or act against a threat, right? We're just kind of like frozen. And fawn is our body's stress response to trying to please someone to avoid conflict. Okay. So this is a short video. It's about 4 minutes long. Just gives a little bit more information on the fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And it's a great little video, especially since like this fawn now is coming out more itself. And when I was putting together this presentation, that's when I started finding out more about fawn because before it was just fight, flight, or freeze. Okay, so we'll just take a minute to watch this. Okay. So now we're going to start looking at resiliency. Okay. Now, have you ever wondered why some people are particularly good at dealing with ups and downs and seem to go through life with a very positive attitude all the time? Um, sometimes you might look at these people and like, really, what do you have to be happy about today? Why are you always so happy? Right? There's many reasons why people approach life the way they do, but those who are good at coping with challenges have something in common: resiliency. Okay. When children are resilient, they're often really good at solving problems, learning new skills. They become braver. They're more curious to try things, set themselves out a little bit more. They're more adaptable, and they're more able to extend their reach into the world or their general environment around them. And when things don't go well and children feel anxious or sad, disappointed, afraid or frustration, resilience helps them to understand that these uncomfortable emotions that they're experiencing usually don't last forever, right? And the great news is that resilience is something that can be nurtured in all children. And it's not something that kids either have or don't have. It's a skill that they have to develop as they grow. So, resilience can be defined as the ability to adapt to stress, challenges, and trauma, or in other words, the ability to bounce back from a difficult situation. Okay. We're born with the capacity for resilience, but resilience is not something that we have or don't have, as I mentioned before. And we have to work on it throughout our entire lives, and we need to start as soon as possible. A resilient person strives to survive, minimize, and overcome any damaging effects that they may have experienced in life or those life adversities. And resilient people understand that they can solve problems, even though sometimes things don't always work out as we had planned, right? Might look at stressful situations as opportunities to grow and learn instead of being unable to overcome them. And there's a quote from Bo Taplin that says it perfectly. She was unstoppable, not because she did not have failures or doubts, but because she continued despite them. Okay, that's a very powerful quote. Um, and this little guy here in the picture, really the best time to foster resiliency is during early childhood. And you guys are doing that every day. Okay, so when children experience adversity, it helps them become resilient, right? The support children that are receiving while experiencing adversity and to the extent in which that support meets their needs and circumstances helps them to develop that resilience. And depending on the nature and severity of the adversity, some children may need extra additional specialized supports. Maybe they might need clinical supports, family therapy. However, you can support children to develop the foundations for resilience at any time. Okay, so what is resilience? Right? Resilience is something that develops through dynamic process involving the individual factors, so their temperament, environmental factors as well, family relationships, and the interaction between those factors. It is something that exists on a spectrum, right? Not everybody is resilient to the same degree. It is something that can change over time. It is something that everyone can learn to deal with current adverse experiences or to prepare for future adversity. And it is something that may look different in different settings, including family, cultural, and broader community environments. Okay. So what is resilient not? What is not resiliency? Something that a child has or does not have, right? Again, we have to work on it. We have to develop it. It is not solely about the skills and capabilities of the individual child. It is not an innate quality that only some people are born with. It is not a fixed character trait, right? You either have it or you don't. It is not freedom from negative emotions. We all feel. Okay? Um, so I just wanted to share this slide. This is actually some pictures from some children from Western Australia, and it's in the book here. I've included the link as well. So at the end, if you want to check them out yourself. But these are pictures that these children are making, and this little guy talking about adversity. Sorry. Um, he talks about adversity as, this is a brick wall that's fallen over. You need to be resilient to build the wall back up. And the other picture is I'm afraid of heights. I'll call for help. I tell myself no. Resilience is about being strong and brave. Help and niceness and fear can be bad. Right? From the mouths of babes. Okay, so now we're going to take a few minutes to look at the 7 C's, resilience. Okay, now the first one is competence, right? And this is knowing that, children can handle a situation effectively, problem solving in different ways, being able to seek help when needed. Okay, we have that competence. Next, we need the confidence. They need to believe in their own abilities, learning to be responsible, being optimistic, connection, having close relationships with adults and peers. Um, and these should actually say having healthy, close relationships. Okay. Characters, having values that are helping them to decide right and wrong, having the opportunities to practice empathy and what empathy is. Contributing, so having a purpose and motivation, knowing that they have a role in making the world a better place. Coping, having that ability to deal with stress and challenges, and in dealing with mistakes and challenges positively, right? It's okay to make mistakes as long as we're learning from them. And then we have control. So this is their understanding that their decisions and what they're doing can make a difference, right? Whether it's more along the lines of the negative spectrum or the positive part of the spectrum, and having that self-discipline. Okay. So how does resiliency actually develop in children? Through supportive relationships, they contribute to resiliency throughout a child's lifetime, right? For children, it's more basic than that. So most of the resiliency they have and their ability to develop other resiliency assets is dependent on those relationships that they have, particularly relationships with parents or parent figures. And all of you kind of fall within those parent figures because you do spend, a pretty big amount of time with the children in your care, right? Um, One way to think about resiliency and how it develops in children is to break it down into 4 different main sets of assets or abilities. Okay. So our first one are relationships because relationships are utmost important, right? So in reaching out, here's where we want a sense of belonging, having people that we know will be there for us and knowing how to reach out to them. Okay. And this includes having strong parent child relationships, having those social skills and self confidence to reach out as well, the ability to ask for help, right? So if you've got a child who's delayed with speech and language, they don't have to, physically or verbally say, I need help. It could be taking your hand to you, it could be pulling on your clothes. It might even look like a child hitting you, right? And we're thinking that this child is being bad or aggressive, but maybe they're just looking for us because they need our help, right? Need understanding of personal boundaries, right? Your own and those of others, and belonging to, certain communities and groups, okay? And we can't control our feelings, right, all the time. So we also need to look at our emotional skills. So we need to have positive self-esteem. We need to feel good about ourselves, right? And we can't do that unless we're helping build those children up. They have to have the ability to calm themselves, so that self-regulation, even co-regulation is still working towards that emotional development. Again, the ability to talk about their feelings. So they're asking for help. Now they need to talk about their feelings. Having a sense of humor, being able to, shake things off sometimes and being happy and being carefree. The ability to distract themselves, seeing the hopeful side of problems and challenges, right? Okay, my tower fell down. I could either cry about it, I could get mad and throw pieces, or I could try to make it bigger and better and rebuild it. And then knowing how to act appropriately in various situations. Right? We can't control all of our feelings completely, right? But if we're frequently overwhelmed by emotions, we have to pull out all of our energy into trying to cope with them. And that makes it more difficult to get over those bad feelings or those big feelings and make good decisions in challenging situations. And that's why emotional skills are such a key part of resiliency. Okay, so sometimes we feel like we can make things happen in our lives, right? Other times it seems like things just happen for us and beyond our control. People who are resilient feel a greater sense of control over their lives because excuse me, because they understand their own competence, right? And part of those 7 C's. Knowledge and skills enable them to set those realistic goals for themselves and to be able to develop strategies that are going to help accomplish them for them. And children are learning about cause and effect all the time, right? At play, at school, as they're pursuing interests and hobbies. Maybe they're swimming, maybe they're playing soccer. Um, and from their parents' guidance or your guidance and positive disciplines. And all these experiences become part of that developing competence that helps children in all cultures feel that they have some control over their lives. Okay. So we look at competence, and these are skills and thinking abilities that are enabling us to solve problems and influence what happens in our lives. So, setting goals and planning, problem solving, reasoning skills, having those practical skills like being able to, cook, clean, budget, fix things. It doesn't mean this doesn't fit for children, but they pretend to clean, they pretend to cook, right? They pretend to pay money for things, right? These are early learning development skills that they are going to take with them as they get older. The ability to have independence, being assertive, sticking up for themselves, persevering. When something's not working, we're going to keep trying, having those problem solving skills, and then having good judgment and thinking skills. Okay. And then we could also have to have optimism, right? And it seems obvious that a positive outlook on life is an important part of resiliency, but there's a difference between healthy optimism and a mindlessly positive attitude, right? Healthy optimism is realistic, right? It's not based on beliefs, but also on no, sorry, not only on beliefs, but also on knowledge, experience, and that clear understanding of their own skills and their own capabilities, right? Optimism is a positive and hopeful attitude. It's having confidence in our skills and our abilities, the ability to judge risks. So, not just jumping off of things and you think, hey, I can fly, right? Actually knowing that, hey, this might hurt me or it might not hurt me. Positive childhood experiences, their supportive family and community, and they're being generous and supportive of others. Okay. Now, I know that's a lot to take in. We are at 7:47. Um, I am going to give everybody a 5-minute break. I need a water break anyways. You can hear my voice cracking a little bit. So 5 minutes to stretch, go to the loo, grab a drink. Hey, it's 5 o'clock somewhere, right? Or just reflect on what you've heard so far. Okay, so we will come back in 5 minutes and then we're going to jump right back into some strategies. Okay. All right, everybody, we'll see you in 5 minutes. Okay. Do we have everybody back?
Yes.
Amazing. Okay, I hope everybody had a chance to stretch their legs a little bit and get ready to jump into the rest of this evening. Um, okay, so the quote here from Building Resilience in Children 0 to 12 Practice Guide states that building children's resilience involves both improving the skills and capabilities of the child and improving the environments around the child. Okay, so ideally, to build children's resilience, we need to focus on approaches that are going to target children specifically, as well as their environment, including parents, their families, peers, the educational system, community settings. Um, and those high quality relationships, both within and outside of a child's family, is critical to a child's resilience, right? So we have our family factors. So we've got parenting, family relationships, connectedness. So it's not just about the relationships, about that connected piece, right? Child factors, their coping skills, their self regulation abilities, confidence, social skills. Community factors, so having that connection with peers, whether it's in school, um, going through like the community, going to parks, having play dates with just within the neighborhood, opportunity to participate in healthy risk taking, right? We talked about, understanding what's healthy risk, what's not healthy risk. And then societal factors, right? We're not going to get into any of that because at a society level and public policy levels, we don't have any control over, right? That's for the hierarchy up there and the government and everything else. So we're specifically going to keep it down to focus what we have control over. Okay. So I want to take a little bit of time to talk about factors that can help children adapt. Okay. So first, we're going to look at the individual, so the child themselves. Factors that are going to help them adapt are going to be having those adaptive emotional skills that we talked about earlier. They need to have a perception of control and their ability to impact their own life, right? So a lot of times we see toddlers, they want to do everything on their own. They're building resiliency this way. When they're telling us no all the time, they don't want us to feed them, they don't want us to do anything for them anymore. They want this independence, right? And that whole toddler creed. This is the part where they're starting to build that resiliency, right? They're problem solving, they're learning from their choices, they're learning through positive interactions, right? Self-esteem and self-efficacy, the ability to identify and articulate those feelings or needs, social skills and empathy, and coping skills. They need to have a sense of humor, right? Things just kind of need to roll off. We fall down, we get back up. Oh man, that was a nasty fall. Okay, let's keep going and doing what we're doing, right? Having good physical health, having higher intellectual capacities and cognitive competencies. And this doesn't mean that our children have to be like brain surgeons in the future. It just means that they need to have the ability to be able to have those opportunities as well to reach that capacity, making sure they've got that educational system, the high care programming that they're receiving from you guys all the time, right? All the activities you're doing with them, the personal, one-on-ones and the caring, nurturing environments that you provide, that all adds into that higher intellectual capacity. Um, Gender, girls tend to be more resilient than boys, right? Boys tend to react more physically. And that's kind of just been throughout the years. People used to think it was a stereotype. I don't know if it's a stereotype or not because it does tend to see it hits that mark almost every time. They need to have an easy temperament, right? All children are born with a set of temperamental traits which affect the way their personalities develop. And research has shown that children's temperament traits tend to be fairly stable. A child who's very outgoing and loves to explore at age 2 will probably be like that at 6 years old, 12 years old, 18, and even 28. Their temperament generally is not something that, really we can change. It's something that we need to understand and work with in our children. So some children may not have that easygoing temperament, and we need to learn to work with that, right? And a child's temperamental traits will also affect the way that they develop those resiliency skills, right? And also those differences also have to explain why certain children develop assets more or less easily than others. We also look at genes, right? If a child has favorable genes, development of self-regulation. Again, self-regulation comes up almost everywhere, and that sense of belonging, right? So it's not just about having a relationship, it's about having that positive, stable, nurturing relationship. Next, we look at the family, right? Family is a big factor, right? Um, we want good parenting. We want positive family relationships and connectedness again, right? The connection needs to be there. As a parent or guardian, how can you, help build emotional resilience in kids? Um, it's there's so many ways that we can do this, right? We can spend quality time with our children. So I know we're busy, right? We want to program, we need to clean, we need to give snacks and lunches, and we need to play, we need to set up the program. Um, but we need to try to find some of that time where we can have that quality sit down time with our kids, even if it's just for 5 minutes at a time every day. Okay. When children are feeling loved and supported, they're developing emotional strength, right? And they're going to want to come to you when they have a problem or when they need some support in something, right? Spend that time with them. Ask them how their day went, what they loved about their day, what they didn't like about their day, and engage in their stories. We want to communicate with their feelings, right? Again, we want to talk about our own feelings so that the children learn to share their worries and fears with us. We want to teach them to be open so again that when trouble does come up, they know that they can approach you, right? And they're not going to be scared of what that communicating might look like. You may very well be that safe space for a child to communicate with and maybe not so much at home, right? You might be that safety guide for them. We want to give them time, right? We don't want to rush in and solve all of their problems, right? We need to give them time to work things out themselves. Um, they need to learn to resolve these and own it up and learn to wait for their signal. Okay, we need to be patient and wait for it. We can't build ourselves up if we don't fail a little bit, right? It's that whole problem solving part. We want to acknowledge and appreciate. We want to let them experience that failure, disappointment. And it's important to praise that effort, encourage them to try again. So if something doesn't work out, it's not like, oh, great, you know what, you couldn't do it, right? I don't think I've ever heard any of you ever say that. I don't think I ever would. But some parents might be like, oh, now look what you did, right? As opposed to, hey, you know what, that was a really great try. Let's give it another try. Is there something else we can do differently, right? You know, your blocks didn't fit that way. I wonder what happened. That's okay. Let's try again. What do you think we can do, right? And appreciate, not just the big contributions, but also those little contributions as well. Okay. We need to know our own wrongs, right? As the adults and the more knowing adult, right? You have to learn to acknowledge your own mistakes and shortcomings. We're not perfect. Okay. And we need to accept that we're not right all the time. We need to acknowledge our mistakes and teach the children that mistakes are essential for learning and for growth. If we don't make mistakes, we can't learn. Okay? We want to be gentle and kind in our words and in deeds. If our children can't find the solution to a problem, we can use gentle questioning to help guide them towards it. Again, we don't want to just give them the answer, right? We want to avoid using words or phrases that might hurt them. Um, so, for example, like as an adult and parent, we should know better, being gentle and kind with the children because we know that's how they follow us is through our modeling for them. We want to make sure the children are eating well, getting enough sleep and exercise. This is kind of hard because a lot of times, especially with before and after care, we don't have a lot of opportunity, especially for late pickups, to connect with families, right? And a lot of times in the before and after care, children are coming right to school. They're not coming to the daycare beforehand. And this could prove challenging because you don't know, did they have breakfast? Did they have a good sleep last night? Are they not feeling well? What was their morning like? You don't have that opportunity to really connect. And that can make a big difference in a child. We know about hangry, right? We know when children are tired, they're miserable. When we're tired and hungry, we're miserable. And we're adults and can control our emotions most of the time. So imagine these little people with these big feelings, they just don't know what to do with it. want to always promote the bright side, right? We want to look at that optimism and emotional resilience that are going together. Um, Kids, again, might be more, some might be more naturally optimistic than other ones, but optimism can be nurtured, right? If we have a child in our care that seems to be inferior, acknowledge the feelings that are going to lead to pessimistic thinking and teach the child to reframe those thoughts to find the good in it. And then we want to embody emotional resiliency, right? And this is the most important thing. The best way to teach resiliency isn't to embody it yourself, right? We all encounter stressful situations. We use coping and calming strategies in handling those situations. Practice mindfulness and having breathing exercises with the children. And deep breathing, we know, can be a very effective way to work through stress, right? And we always also want to label our emotions and talk about our feelings to the children, right? It's okay for us to feel, and we want them to know that it's okay for them to feel. If we hide our feelings and hide our own emotions, what is that telling our children? It's not okay to talk about it. It's not okay to show that we're upset or we're sad or we're hurt, right? We need to be an open book for them. So we also need to look at that good parenting, positive connected, low family stress, sound parental mental health, absence of alcoholism and drug abuse, and of course, that sense of safety. Okay. And these are the ones that we just talked about. Okay. So now when we're working with parents, this part's where we're really going to resonate, right? Because by the time we get a chance to talk to our parents, and again, we may not always get a chance to. So when working with parents, first we need to remind them about the importance of their support. Okay. As their child is developing and maintaining relationships with extended family members and friends, right? We want to tell a parent that, sometimes we forget how much that we can help children connect with others, even just by organizing for them to become families or friends, right? So, hey, we've got Anna over here, and, she's been having some challenges because there's been a separation in the family. Oh, well, we've got little Jacob over here. His family's also gone through a separation. What if we bring parents together to recognize their support together to help each other out and their experiences and to be somebody who might understand what they're going through? Right? Sometimes talking to our own family members is harder than just reaching out to a stranger because you're not going to be judged by that stranger who's going through the same thing, but you might feel judged by your family or stigmatism of maybe having a child diagnosed with autism, and culturally that's not right. You must be a bad mom. You did something wrong. Okay. We want to talk to parents about their own parenting strengths, especially when they're being really hard on themselves. And a lot of parents are, especially for these parents who every time they come in and they see us, oh God, how was his day today? What did he do? Or what did she do? Um, Feeling defeated from the moment they walk in, not even, you haven't even said a word to them yet, right? We want to remind them of everything they're doing well, right? We can say things like, hey, you always greet Luca with a very big smile and a nice hug. It's so nice to see that connection with you. Or, you've helped Amy learn, so much about his culture. It's really great for them, right? Parents need to be recognized and validated as well, okay? Then we want to encourage parents to develop friendships with those other parents, like we spoke about, right? Giving them that opportunity again to talk openly and honestly about that parenting, okay? Play groups, parent groups, any of those type of things can help support. Play dates in the park after, daycare pickup, right? Then we want to remind parents that, when they feel supported, it's going to have a positive impact on the relationships with their children, right? Um, We're letting them know we see you, we hear you, we see how you're acting with your child, and that's a beautiful relationship. And it's affirming that, what, they are doing their best and they are being recognized. Everybody needs to feel recognized. And then we want to encourage environments that are going to promote the parent's sense of belonging and trust, right? Um, so, for example, if there's a specific area where parents can, wait to speak to you, providing maybe a facility for them to have a cup of coffee or something for themselves and talk with each other. A lot of times, and I get it, I've worked on the front line for many years myself. Parents come to pick their kids up at the end of the day, and you're like, guys, just get out of here. I want to go home. I'm tired. I've dealt with 16 children for the last 3 hours, and you're coming in at 5:59 and you're standing around talking with another parent, right? I get it, right? And I'm not talking about these types of parents, but opening up that environment, giving them some way that they can, have those connections with you as well, right? The better connection you have with a parent, and these connections just start being built right from the time they register and come into the programs, right? You want to build that relationship, that connectedness with the families again, so that they're feeling heard, they're feeling validated, and that will roll over into the way that they're caring for their child as well and teaching all these skills. Okay, so community and society. Um, so this part we want to look at those connections and interactions with our children's peers, the educational setting, so providing that positive, encouraging environment, which you ladies are doing all the time, um, neighborhood and community being socially inclusive for families, they're children friendly, they've got values and beliefs that are including child friendly spaces like parks and community centers. And socially inclusive public policies. And again, we don't have any control over that. That's in like a perfect society, and all the money in the world the government actually wants to give to early childhood education. So, what if, just thinking to yourselves here, what if a child's family and home are not providing that consistent safety, comfort, and protection that a child needs, right? What do you think can happen in those times? Thinking about ACEs and resiliency, if a child's family and home do not provide those consistent safety, comfort, and protection, what do you think might happen? Again, feel free just to jump in and share. No wrong answers here.
They
Nobody?
definitely will
Yes,
they'll probably have a harder time when they're adults because they have a lot of stuff to process, right? So because they've got so much adversity that they've had to go through. They probably will build resiliency because they have to, if they can, right? But they'll definitely that will carry into their adult life.
absolutely. Danielle, was that you?
Yes, it was
Yeah.
me. It was me.
Thank you. Again, I can't
All
see
right.
anybody, so I'm just going there.
Okay.
Anybody else have any ideas? I know it's late and you're like, listen, lady, I just came here to listen, and that's absolutely okay. All right. If you go ahead.
So, sorry, Brenda Lee. So I've read somewhere that depression and anxiety um, can also be something that is carried over to adulthood. Is that right? From a young age?
Absolutely.
If, yeah, if it's not taken care of.
Mhm.
So, yeah, that, I hope that, you know, all all the children can be resilient and can cope, but sometimes kids can't cope, and they have a hard time coping with certain things. I think things start to come out as they become teenagers and, you know, just
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially with hormones, right? And going through puberty, a lot of that clicks even more and it becomes tenfold. So,
Yes. Yeah.
absolutely. Okay, well, thank you. Anybody else? Speak now or forever hold your peace. All right. Again, if you have anything to share, please just jump right in. I'm very flexible. Okay. So, what if they may develop ways of coping that allow them to survive and function from day to day? So they may become overly sensitive to the moods of others. They may be always watching to figure out, what adults around them are feeling and how they'll behave. They may engage in risky behaviors. Um, I had a friend when we were 11 years old. Um, she came from an abusive family. Her mom was not in the picture from the time she was a baby. Her dad was an alcoholic and he was abusive to her. And she began drinking and became an alcoholic by the time she was 13 years old. So very sad. Kind of dropped out of the picture. Unfortunately, as kids, we didn't have all these trainings back in the day. I'm not going to say how old I am, but we didn't have these trainings to learn about adversity and resiliency and support and stress and anxiety. We didn't talk about those things when we were kids, right? We dealt with it. We were kicked outside until the street lights came on, and then we came in the house. So it was a very different time back then. Um, and
I remember those days. Sorry,
no,
I'm going to jump in. I remember that's right. They didn't talk about any of that. They didn't talk about any of that. So, yeah, I know exactly the same. So
mhm,
now we're so fortunate to have so many things at our fingertips. Yeah,
we
just
really are.
learning opportunities
Yep.
for sure. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah,
It was
yeah.
hard as a kid and we didn't realize it, right? Like we sucked it up or, we paid the consequences. And I mean, while it worked for some of us, it didn't work so well for others, right? Children may also start to withhold their own emotions from others, right? Never letting them see when they're afraid, they're sad or angry, just kind of like they shut off, right? And these kind of learned adaptations make sense when physical or emotional threats are always present, right? So as a child grows up and encounters situations and relationships that are safe, these adaptations are no longer helpful and in fact might be counterproductive and interfere with their capacity to live, to feel loved and to be loved. They learn that they cannot rely on others to help them, right? When relationships are unstable or unpredictable, children learn that they can't rely on others to help them. Especially when their primary caregivers are exploiting or there's child abuse, the children are learning that, he or she is bad and the world is a terrible place. And children who don't have healthy attachments have been shown to be more vulnerable to stress and anxiety, as you mentioned earlier, Maria, right? That stress and anxiety starts so early, and then they have trouble controlling and expressing their emotions, reacting, violently or inappropriately to situations that, going back to that fight or flight stage when it might not actually be that, but in their mind is telling them this is where they are right now. They need to escape because they're not safe. Their immune system gets compromised, right? And we talked about this back when we are looking at the physiological symptoms of ACEs. So when a child grows up afraid or is under constant or extreme stress or anxiety, the immune system and body stress response system doesn't develop normally, right? And it can actually impair the development of the brain or rewire the brain and the nervous system. And what does that tell you? Stress is crazy dangerous, which is so important why we need to manage our stress responses. And again, we can do those. We have those techniques. We have the tools as adults to know that we can do these things. We can do deep breathing. We can, read a book. We can go for a walk. We can do yoga if you do yoga. Whatever those things are that you do, we know we can do those. Our children don't know those yet. It's up to us to help teach them. And then they may have difficulties with their emotions, their behaviors, their cognitive abilities, and self concept, right? They'll have difficulties with identifying and expressing, managing those emotions, and they might have a limited language for their feeling state. So they may not be able to tell us that they're angry or sad or hurting. Right, because they have limited language for that. And their emotional responses may be very unpredictable or even explosive. We've had some of those children in our care who are very explosive, right? And a child may react to a reminder of a traumatic event, right? It could look like, maybe they're angry, they're sad, they're avoiding, maybe they're trembling a little bit, they look like they're really on edge. Um, and such a child may react often, powerfully, and have difficulty calming down when upset, and even with co-regulation, may have great difficulties calming. And many of these kids struggle with self-regulation, right? They lack impulse control, the ability to think through consequences before acting. Um, and as a result, complexly traumatized children may behave in ways, again, that are unpredictable, oppositional, volatile, and extreme. Again, receiving diagnosis for ADHD or ADD or oppositional defiant disorder or oppositional conduct disorder. So many of these disorders that should not be there, right? So many of these diagnoses that should not be given. These children need to be given love and care and acceptance, right? And they may have problems thinking clearly, reasoning, problem solving. They're unable to plan ahead or anticipate the future or act accordingly. They may find everything challenging and be fearful of the future of what might be coming, right? They might also find it hard to acquire new skills or take in any type of new information. And struggle with sustaining that attention or curiosity, or be very easily distracted because they're always looking for that next danger, that next threat, right? So they're always on that fight or flight response. Okay, so now what? Where do we go? Where do we go from here? Um, Again, I'd like to open the floor for anybody, if you're comfortable, to invite you to share if there's maybe a time where you've experienced adversity in your own life, or if you know maybe of a child who has experienced adversity. Um, how did you cope with that, and what was the outcome? Again, you don't have to share. I'm just opening it up if you're comfortable. Nobody? And that's okay, right?
Hi, hi,
Hi.
hi, Brindley. This is Binish from Meta. Um,
Hi.
I don't have a comment, but I have a question.
For
We have
sure.
a child. Yeah, we have a child in our center. Uh, like you said that if they have a play date, or you can talk to the parent, and the children have a play date, they can help for this resilience in their behavior. But that child, either he's playing by himself, or he's kind of a bothering other one. How can we encourage him to play with the other children, or ask the parents to have a play date or something?
Okay, thank you for the question. How old is this little one?
Like close to 4 o'clock, 4 years old.
Okay. Um, does this child have any diagnoses or anything like that? Are they an only
No, no.
child?
Only child?
Okay. Um, so what we can do, a lot of times when a child is an only child, depending on the family, if they take them out, they have cousins or siblings, anything like that, what you can do is you can have activities out on your table, something that he really likes to play with, so something that's really highly motivating for him, and have another child come over and take turns with sharing simple games like Snakes and Ladders or Candyland, having a few materials working together to build something,
Mm-hmm.
opportunities like that where he can work with just one other child and we're working on, okay, your turn, their turn. And you want to facilitate that yourself as well, or your room partner. And once he's comfortable playing with that one child, then we can move into other activities. We can bring in another peer, but we want to start slow and help build a relationship with starting off with just one child. Um, Generally, we would recommend to go for a child who is very social and maybe older than the child in question,
Mm-hmm.
who already has those social skills, who can manage when a child grabs a toy back or doesn't want to share. They're going to help with hand over hand with the wording of first your turn, then their turn, waiting and just being positive. Like, oh my gosh, you waited so well for your turn. Yes, high five, buddy. That's amazing. Okay, now it's your turn. Great waiting for your turn. And really praising the child for all small accomplishments that they do.
Yeah.
You, we,
Wait, sorry, I interrupted.
no, no.
We try these things, but the thing is, his attention span is very, the less time. Within a second, he want to jump to the other activity, and he say, "I don't like it. I get bored and stuff," and then he run away or start screaming.
Okay, so
I'm not sorry,
go ahead.
sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if Benish added, but the mom has been diagnosed with something and like she's been in and out of the hospital as well. So I remember when you mentioned in the beginning, I can't remember the triangular thing and they had like different factors. You
Mhm.
say that a loss of a parent, but it's not really a loss, but technically one parent is kind of not really there most of the time because she's like in and out of the hospital. I don't know if that affects like his behavior, but yeah, but she's right. Like,
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? You hit it on, but you said, it's not really a loss of a parent, but it is, right? Because this parent could have been very active before in his life. And, that nurturing and that bond with the mother, if that's not there, that's a loss, right? So that very well could be affecting. He's not wanting to get close with us. I'm not a psychologist, right? Again, remember, I'm not a medical practitioner, but science for me would point to, hey, if mom is having a hard time and challenging herself, regardless of whether it's a mental health illness, if it's a physical illness, whatever that might be, and mom has been kind of taken away and she's
Okay.
not maintaining that connection, through the,
580.
pardon?
Oh, sorry.
It's okay. And that connection isn't being maintained or being that serve and return being reciprocated, and there's not another adult filling in that gap for her, um, he could be feeling kind of abandoned, right? He may not want to get close to somebody else because, he was close with mommy and now he's not close with mommy anymore. Again, I'm not a psychologist, but that's something that makes a big difference. And that's why it's so important to have those relationships with families because that gives us insight into what's happening, right? We can talk more about sometimes, mummies get sick and mummy still loves us and being able to fill in some of those gaps that our children might be missing on. So that might be worth a conversation more with the parents and kind of see, what other changes have been happening. What does, home life look like right now for you? It doesn't have to be all personal, but what does his day look like from the time when he wakes up in the morning to the time he goes to bed? Getting a sense of his routine, the people that are involved in his life, and that might help guide you a little bit more in how to support him in the room. I hope that helped.
Yeah, maybe.
And you can always reach out to who's your consultant? You have Karen? Sally, you have Karen for your center? Is this for
Yes, we
Meta
have
or Holy
Karen.
Cross?
For Meta, yes, we have
Meta,
Karen.
Meta.
Okay, so you can always reach out to Karen as well for any extra supports or resources or anything like that as well. If it's a lot of behaviors that are occurring, it might be worth having an extra set of eyes kind of come in that. But I would touch base first with the family and see, are they experiencing these at home as well when they go out, other family members or whatever, getting an idea of, where this little one is at home too. We need to keep that relationship and communication open between home because we might see things that might have happened maybe 2 weeks ago at home could come over and manifest in the childcare center, right? We know that kids will show their behaviors and their emotions more when they feel safe, right? For those of you who had children and your kids have ever come home and they take everything out on you and they're like, I hate you, blah, 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 blah. My kids have done it too. It might feel really bad, but they feel safe and unjudged, and they know that we still love them unconditionally and they can unpack everything that they have going on and that we're not going to judge them, right? That makes a really big difference. So connect with the family is the best advice that I can give you right now and kind of see, what's going on, if there's anything that you can do to help them, if there's any type of support you can give and start the trail from there. Okay.
Thank you, Brenda.
My pleasure. I hope that was helpful. I know it's hard. I don't know the child. I don't know the whole background. So that would be the first place that I would start. Okay. Okay. So how are we going to teach resilience, right? Resilience indicates, children's mostly depend on their connections to other people, as we've been talking about, right? Rather than their own inherent qualities, right? What we want to do is we want to be supportive. Again, we want to be caring and encouraging. We want to hold expectations on what we want them to achieve or attain by the end of the day. Okay. Now, attainable, yes, we want to challenge them, but we don't want to set them up for failure. Okay. It has to be something that we know they can accomplish. All right. We want to listen to their voice and respect them. We want to validate. Okay. We want to express our love for the child and acknowledge what they do. I love when you come in after school. I missed you. I hope you had a great day. Vula, I've heard you say that a few times with the children. Like they come in and they know they're loved, no matter how bad their day has been in school. They come in and they feel loved and valued and accepted, and they're happy to be there. Um, Essentially, what we want to do is we want to have those positive outcomes, those protective factors, outweighing those risk factors or those negative outcomes, right? And again, through warm and supportive parenting in adults, those coping skills, stable environments, those positive experiences are outweighing those adversities that they've experienced. So I was actually going to highlight the meta of the metaphor here, but I thought, no, that would be really cheesy, so I didn't do that. um, Another way to kind of look at resilience is through this metaphor, okay? So essentially, it's explaining the concept of resilience, imagining a plane in mid-flight encountering a bad storm, okay? The storm represents adversity, and the ability of the plane to get through the storm and reach its destination depends on its level of resilience. Okay, so the factors, including in here, the pilot of this plane is the child. Okay, then you've got the co-pilot, the flight and ground crew. These are the parents, siblings, extended family, yourselves as educators, right? You guys are the co-pilots. You're helping this child. The equipment available to the pilot and the crew, the resources that are available to the child and the family, right? Your consultation staff, um, doctors, um, anybody else that can provide those supports and resources. The type of plane, right? Is our child's temperament, their age, and how severe and how long the storm lasts, or the severity and duration of the adversity. Okay, all these factors are going to determine how much the plane is able to stay on course, right? And different planes are going to respond to poor weather conditions in different ways, right? The same way that different children will respond to the same adversity in different ways, right? You could have small seaplanes in a big storm. They're not going to be able to manage it like a 747 or whatever they are, Airbuses, whatever the plane names are nowadays. Okay. Regardless of this, though, the pilot or the child cannot handle this storm adequately without the support of the flight and ground crews, in the same way that a child's resilience depends upon the support they get from the people around them. Okay. So how do we raise resilient children? Some of these factors cannot be changed, such as a child's genetic makeup or their gender, but there are many that can be proactively provided or supported. Okay. Um, the most common protective factor for a child's resilience is having at least one close, positive relationship with a warm and responsive parent or adult caretaker. Okay. We want to build strong relationships through authoritative parenting. Okay. And in this style, we're nurturing, we're responsive, we're supportive, but we're setting firm limits for children, right? We attempt to control their behavior by explaining rules, discussing and reasoning, and having them listen to, or we listen to their viewpoint, although we may not always accept it, but we listen, right? They are feeling heard, accepted, and validated. We want to facilitate the development of emotional regulation, which is a very key protective factor. We want to allow them autonomy and encourage that independence, right? We want to help them to gain a sense of control over their own lives. And when responding to a child, we need to be aware of our own wording and our tone, right? So we can offer phrases such as, how can I help you? Or what can I do for you, rather than what did you do during a conflict situation, right? We want to have sensible and predictable schedules and routines, and these are really important. We know kids with extra support needs, specifically those on the autism spectrum, they thrive on routine and structure, right? This is true for all children, especially those who have gone through traumatic experiences. Maybe they've gone from home to home. They, for whatever reason, there's no stable and healthy routine and schedule for them. So our schedules and routines need to be in place for them to feel safe. Okay. And we may be the only, have the only routines and predictable schedules in their lives, right? We don't know that, but we might be those only people who have that for them. Then we want to label emotions and validate, right? We want to use emotion coaching. We want to say, for example, say a toddler got paint all over their favorite toy, and now they're upset. We can say, we'd be like, well, it's very tempting to say, okay, don't worry about it. We'll just get another one, or there's nothing to be sad about, right? We can offer other toys, one after the other, or even gadgets. And we can say, hey, see, playing with these is just as much fun. Or scolding a child for being careless, right? We don't want to do that. If we want to build resilience, we need to describe what happened objectively, right? Hey, there's paint on your teddy bear. You want to acknowledge how they feel. I can see that you're really sad and upset that that paint is on your teddy bear. Allow them to safely and respectfully express their emotions, right? So rather than saying, well, you shouldn't have been having your teddy bear there when you were painting. You should have left it in your cubby like I told you so, right? That's not going to help them build resilience. That's not going to help them feel safe to express their emotions, right? Or if, a child hurts another child because they're upset because they stole their car or something like that. It's okay to cry. Everybody cries when they're mad or sad, but it's not okay to hurt another person's body, right? When they've calmed down, we invite them to find solutions. What do you think we could do about that next time when they're calm? Helping them to make those decisions, right? Building that resiliency. Now, emotion coaching and validation. Emotion coaching are skills that are ways to support another person's emotional development and self-esteem, right? And these skills can be used, to one's ability to be able to regulate their own emotions in a moment of upset. Um, and this is where we're validating, okay? They need to know it's okay. We also talk about our own emotions, as I mentioned earlier, letting them know that it's okay to be mad. You know what? I'm mad too when, I'm in a hurry to work and I'm hitting all the red lights, or I get sad too when, I miss my parents when they go to work, or whatever that might be, right? We're identifying with them, we're validating them. Then we want to help them communicate their needs and wishes, right? If they don't have the words and they're very upset, we help them give those words through that validation. We want to be calm and consistent in ourselves and our responses, right? Um, Failure is a stepping stone to success, right? The child, let them make mistakes and learn from them. This helps them to develop age-appropriate decision-making skills. And if they don't have those skills, we risk them growing up to be indecisive adults who are constantly needing rescuing or guidance, right? So these are kids who will grow up to be in the fawn stage their whole lives, right? Always wanting to make people happy and for people to rescue them. Then we want to model those coping mechanisms, right? Taking those deep breaths, exercising. Kids learn best by example. And teaching resilience starts with modeling this behavior for kids so they can learn by that example and become more self-confident as they grow older. How do we act when things don't go our way? We're not perfect and we shouldn't try to be, right? We can show our children that we feel upset too, show them positive ways of dealing with those feelings. By learning to cope with changes in their everyday lives positively, children are going to build that sense of self-efficacy and perceived control that they will carry on with them throughout their through future challenges. Okay? We want to provide appropriate comfort, shaming, and blaming. This is a big one. We want to avoid those. Absolutely, right? Some people think that shaming or blaming makes kids more resilient and toughens them up. Um, for example, some of you may have heard, boys don't cry, right? Suck it up, buttercup, those type of things. Um, they'll experience bullying in the future, so they need to suck it up. They need to take the strides. Um, this isn't true. In fact, it's the complete opposite, right? Resulting feelings of guilt and shame harm children. It builds vulnerabilities and it leads to future bullying or victimization. Shaming a child makes them feel less likely to make decisions and be proactive in the future. And then they don't learn what the right thing is to do. Okay. And we want to avoid making assumptions. We do this all the time as adults, right? And on behalf of the children. We need to listen to the child's descriptions of the challenges they're experiencing and find out what it is that they value, right? So we can say to them, not assume that, hey, well, I know you're upset because your tower fell over, right? And instead, you can say, you know what? Tell me about what's difficult for you. What is making you sad that the tower fell over? And it may not be what you think, right? Maybe it's they had one red block at the top and now they can't find that red block. And it was the one thing they wanted to put on their tower, right? Get them to talk to you about what is bothering them. We also want to let them experience their emotions, right? Again, we're acknowledging how they feel and we're helping them to put those into words. Okay? We want to take that time to listen attentively to them when they're speaking about what worries them. So not, you're looking around the room and you've got 50 other things on your mind and you're going through and they're trying to talk to you. You need to give them your undivided attention for that short time that they need you. Okay? When they're experiencing a difficult situation, ask them how they want us to support them, right? Again, don't assume that they need us. Maybe they just need a hug. Maybe they just need to yell and cry. Okay? We want to help them develop those strategies to deal with those difficult situations on their own, helping them come up with their own solutions. Help them by guiding them, not by doing for them, right? And it can also be helpful to encourage them to experience that failure again rather than protect them from it. This is going to build that resiliency. So when they fail something, they're going to try again, right? We need to put that failure into perspective. You can't grow if you don't fail. Okay. And again, validate. Always validate. They need to be heard. We can also suggest more helpful self-talk, right? If a child is talking negatively towards themselves all the time. And we can do this by standing in front of the mirror saying, hey, I love your hair. I love your eyes. I love the way you play nicely with your friends. Lots of positive affirmations for this child. Again, we don't always know what's happening at the home, right? We don't know if the child is being belittled or bad things are being said to them or whatever might be happening in their home environment, right? Always help them with self talk and try to help them get over that negativity for themselves. Okay. We want to try to role model healthy thinking when facing challenges of our own. So we can do this by, thanking other people for their support and saying, hey, things will get better soon and I can cope with this. It shows that you're expecting good things are possible. We want to model calm and rational problem solving with the other adults in our lives, right? Or in our programs, right? We need to problem solve and be calm and rational. Even if you disagree, that's okay. But we're showing the children that it's okay to disagree, but we work it out, right? It teaches children that problem solving what it looks like, right? It teaches them that problems and issues can be worked through calmly and rationally. And it also helps them to feel more positive, that they can see difficult times are a part of life, right? If, my teachers are experiencing this and I'm experiencing this, well, then it might be normal, right? It's part of life. It's going to pass and things will get better. Okay. And then talking about it through role plays, positive conversations. Again, talking about, when kids come in after school, hey, what's the best thing that happened to you today? What was the worst thing that happened today? What really sucked about your day, right? Tell me about it. Ideally, what we want to do is we want to support the children in our care by helping them to move from the state of I won't do it all the way up to yes, I did it. And there's a lot of steps, right? They're not just going to go from I won't do it to yes, I did it, right? They're going to think I can't do it, but I really want to do it. Okay, now how do I do it? You know what? I'm going to try to do it. I can do it. I will do it. And yes, I did it. Okay, it is a long staircase up, and they're going to need to go through both of those. And they may go back down a couple steps. That's okay. And they'll go back up again. But as long as we're encouraging them and we're there for them and we're validating them and we're giving them that secure attachment and connectedness that they need, they're going to build that resiliency to get up to that top step. Okay, so just another couple of pictures, some more children from Western Australia. Rosie says, I'm resilient because when I always fall, I get back up. This boy now knows how to use resilience. I'm going to be strong. Let our feelings come out. Being brave, forgiving, being nice, grateful, making good choices, smart decisions. Don't dwell on it, being smart and strong. A hug. Tell the teacher, support, talking to mom, don't hide, think before you do, being tough, talking to somebody, all these really strong, encouraging words, right, from children. Okay, so we are rounding the end of tonight. I've got a few breakout rooms set up because it is 8:45 and we are done at 9. I'm happy to just put it through in the chat or people speaking out. I will read out the case study and everybody can kind of come up with some ideas of what we can do. How do we want to proceed? We can do breakout group of 5 to 7 minutes, or we can just discuss it all as a group, what we would like to do.
I'd say discuss it all in a group if everybody would like to do that.
Yeah, I would suggest the same.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. We can
Yeah, I think
definitely do
so.
that. Okay, so our first case study is Lily. All right. She's a 9-year-old girl who recently experienced the loss of her beloved pet dog. Some of you may have experienced that. I have. It is very sad. She's been exhibiting signs of sadness and withdrawal since then. How would we help Lily build resilience to overcome this adversity in her life? And again, you guys, you can just shout everything out.
First, I would say validate her feelings, that she's feeling really sad about the fact that she's lost her pet and that that you understand how she's feeling. That would be one of my first things I think I would say to Lily.
Absolutely.
Yeah, validate those feelings.
Yeah, absolutely.
I
I
think
would.
maybe providing, sorry, Danielle,
No,
providing
go,
maybe
Sally.
some
Go. I'll go
comfort,
after you. I'll go after you. Go after you.
providing some comfort, like, lots of hugs, lots of, showing the child that, you know, just like the comfort, the hugs, the love, you know, I understand, like, just like Maria said, validating their feelings, but also, being there for them.
Mm-hmm.
I'd
Absolutely.
probably see if I could find some literature on losing a pet, something about like Rainbow Bridge, something that makes them feel like they're not alone in their feelings, so that they know that other people have also experienced the death of animals and that it's impacted them in like a really profound way. And I'd probably also see if maybe I could do something to celebrate that animal's life with them, something that would be meaningful to them and would give them some feelings of comfort. Maybe we could draw a picture, put it out in the yard, something like that, a celebration of the animal's life.
Lovely. All great answers. Absolutely. Because again, yes, we want to validate. It is sad. It is, especially, most dogs will live to be, 11 to 14 years on average, depending on the breed. If she's 9 years old, chances are, maybe if this was from old age, this little one has had this dog since before she was born. So she grew with this pet, right? Or maybe it was a new pet and now she's just lost them, right? It could be so traumatic for little one. And again, we don't know the personal story of Lily, right? Maybe her home, maybe this dog in her home was the constant she needed, right? That connected she needed. Maybe she didn't have it from anybody else, right? Great. Okay, so our educator, Mr. Johnson, um, Mr. Johnson is a teacher facing increased stress and burnout due to the demands of his job and personal challenges at home. I'm sure all of us can relate to this at some point. What can we do to support Mr. Johnson? Let's see if we can have anybody else answer this time. Right? And there's no wrong answers, right? No wrong answers. You're not being quizzed or marked on this. I know you're tired, ladies. Come on. We got 10 minutes left. We can do this. Anybody? You are an educator. You were feeling stressed. You were feeling burnt out. What would help you?
Malia's putting her answers in the chat. I don't know if you want to read them, Brenda Lee, if you're able to get into the chat and just read them.
Let me see if I can get here.
I think I would sit down, have a chat with him, see what's bothering him. Maybe we could come to a conclusion together, have a coffee, take him out, get his mind focused on other things.
Absolutely. Thank you, Wula. What else can you do?
You're
Think about yourselves, right? If you're really stressed out, what would help you?
I
Suggest
would
a
want
mental
that
health day.
personally. Yeah.
Pardon?
Go ahead, Wula.
I would want, if I have a close relationship with another educator, I would love that, to go out for a coffee and just let out the steam.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Or even offer them, if they have any sick days or mental health days, maybe to take a day to kind of relax and just take care of themselves.
Yep. I
Absolutely.
agree.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right. And now more than ever, since COVID, so many educators are burning out and leaving the field, right? Because
Yeah.
it's just so challenging, just trying, even for myself, trying to get, extra support for you guys in the programs. There's no staff to fill those spaces because the turnover is so high now, right?
Yep, it is. Unfortunately, it is. And there's been a lot of good people that have left the field. Anyways, that's a whole different
Yeah. Right?
topic.
That's
Sorry,
one
I
of
would
those
get on the
political things that we can't
yeah,
do.
I would get on the bandwagon, Brenda Lee, but anyways, that's for another day.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, so I accessed the chat. Emilia said that in school we learned that and validating we can incorporate art therapy, absolutely, and play therapy. Some children may prefer being left alone, reassuring that you are there. And you know what? That's a great point. Thank you. Because you know what? Sometimes children just don't want to be bothered. They just need to know you're there. So if they're hiding out in a corner or something like that, again, we validate, I see you're really upset right now. I'm right here. If you need me, you need a hug, you need to talk, I'm right here. Don't worry, you're not in any trouble, you're safe, and I'm right here. You let me know when you need me to help. Right? Again, validating, giving them that opportunity to be by themselves. But yes, do never force yourself on a child because you will push them further back. Okay. Um, Reading books, yes. Danielle, you mentioned this about death, maybe a circle, asking other kids if they've lost pets, sharing similar circumstances or experiences. And no worries, thank you. I appreciate that. Yes, most people probably are having dinner, so you can't talk. Um, in any way you can help with the workload from a fellow coworker, absolutely. If you've got a child who's challenging, maybe you can switch up your groups for the day, right? Maybe your room partner can take the child who has a little bit more support needs than your other ones, and then maybe can kind of pair off a little bit that way to support. Um, Talk about what the main issue is. Is it a teamwork or maybe is it the teacher? If it's a team issue, have a team meeting and address the issue. And that's a great idea because you know what? Sometimes people just don't want to say things or they don't want to say the wrong thing or offend people, right? And some people, again, thinking about when we were first learning about adversities and resiliency, if somebody is shot down all the time when they were little, they will never stand up for themselves, right? So this could be a product of that. Maybe Mr. Johnson was always shot down when he was younger, so he doesn't know how to manage that increased stress and burnout to ask for a mental health day or anything like that, right? Binish says, listen to music and dance. Absolutely. Those are on the top of my list of things to do. Thank you so much for sharing. Okay, so now we have our parent, Mr. Garcia. And see, I'm giving you ladies all a break now. We're adding in the male figures for this tonight. So the Garcia family faces financial hardships after Mr. Garcia loses his job unexpectedly. They're struggling to make ends meet and they're experiencing heightened stress and anxiety. What could you do for the parents or Mr. Garcia specifically in this case? Man, you got this, ladies. We
I
got
would try to
5
help.
minutes.
I'm not sure.
I would
This
try
is
to help. Oh, sorry, Maria.
sorry, Fula. No, go ahead. Yes, go
I
ahead,
would
please.
try to I would try to get like a group of people where we could maybe get something to support the family. Maybe a gift card, maybe some other little cards for clothing, maybe show some support that way.
Hmm. Absolutely. Sabrina says referring them to resources such as programs that would be useful to the family. Absolutely. Maria, you were going to add something too?
Yes, I would say refer them to different resources, and I don't want to offend anybody, do you know? So it's a sensitive
Yeah.
topic, right? It's a really sensitive topic, but I may do something too, like for the family, like have something, do something to do like a fundraiser or something. I'm not sure exactly, but I wouldn't want to offend the family, that's for sure. Yeah.
Absolutely. Anybody else? No? Okay. Um, so absolutely great answers. We can also, even just ask, hey, set together a bunch of parents and maybe have a play date where they can invite their child out and hang out for a little while, so maybe the parents can have some time just to work things out on that, because especially on the weekends or in the evenings and you're struggling to do your home routines, get the child bed and bath and eating, and then trying to worry about your own things, it can also cause a lot of fights between or challenges between partners, right, as well. Both losing the job and then having that stress and anxiety, it could affect the home life as well, which then could tailor down to affect the child. So again, having those relationships from the moment that parents come into your center is essential to helping build the resilience of everybody. And so those parents know, hey, you know what, listen, I'm having a hard time, Danielle. I just lost my job. I don't know what it might look like for, little Amy and her behaviors or whatever. I just want to let you know. And then from there, hey, that's okay. I get it. That must be really tough. Again, we want to validate, right? It must be really tough for you. I can't imagine that happening. If there's anything that we can do, please let us know. Parent groups, whatever, get the kids together, coming up with something that might be able to help them. Maybe it might just be, hey, I just need a week. I need to figure this out, whatever that looks like, and just listen and validate. Okay, and absolutely refer to programs if they're willing. Give them the contacts, don't call for them, and just give them some options, right? Here, I found these resources if you're interested. Don't feel like you have to, but just there if you need them. Um, again, sometimes in those moments, those feelings are so heightened and there's so much stress that they may not even know where to start looking, right? They might not know that they can find, a food bank that's, just around the corner from the childcare center, right? Um, Letting them know that those things are available for them. Okay. All right. Let's see. There. Okay. So we are almost done. So I love this quote right here that children who demonstrate resilience come from families and communities that provide caring and support, hold high expectations, and encourage children's participation. Right. And if you notice at the beginning of the presentation, I included little flowers that are growing out of cracks in the cement, right? It's showing that even though things could be really tough and dead feeling, life can still grow from that. Okay. And resilience helps kids navigate the challenges they encounter as they grow. Stress is inevitable, right? But being resilient is one of the best ways to cope with it. Molding little humans into healthy, thriving big ones isn't about clearing adversity out of their way. It's a little bit of stress won't hurt them. In fact, those can be life giving and helps them to develop the skills they need to flourish in life. Okay, I'm going to be respectful of everybody's time. The link to this video, I try to put Sesame Street videos in all my workshops and presentations because they're just so darn cute. And I love Sesame Street. So this one here is on resiliency. It's something you can share with your children, your families, whoever you like. It's very family friendly, but the link will be there for you. There's also another video. Um, how to build resilience. This one here is more adult focused. Okay. It is about 5 minutes long. So again, we're not going to go through that. If you would like to look at it for yourself, again, the link is there and you're welcome to access that link. Okay. And some further supports that are available that you can check out. And thank you so much for joining me this evening. I'm going to unshare. I'm going to turn off our recording.